Book of 3, Chapter 7, The Trap. From the corridor, a faint sound grew louder. Taran hastened to press his ear against the slot in the portal. He heard the heavy tread of marching feet, the rattle of weapons. He straightened and stood with his back to the wall. The girl had betrayed him. He cast for some means to defend himself, for he had been determined not to be taken easily. For the sake of having something in his hands, Taran picked up the dirty straw and held it ready to fling. It was a pitiable defense. He wished desperately for Gwydion's power to set it ablaze. Soon the footsteps continued. He feared then they would enter the other cell. He breathed a sigh of relief when they did not stop but faded away toward what he would imagined was the far end of the corridor. Perhaps the guard was just being changed. He turned away, certain Eilonwy would not be back, and furious with her and her false promises. She was a rattle-brained fool who would undoubtedly giggle and take it as a great joke when the Cauldron-born came for him. He buried his face in his hands. He could hear her chatter even now. Taran started up again. The voice he heard was real. "Must you always be on the wrong stone? You're too heavy to lift." Taran jumped up and hurriedly cleared the straw away. The flagstone was raised. The light from the golden ball was dim now, but enough for him to see that Eilonwy looked pleased with herself. "Your companion is free," she whispered, "and I took Malinger from the stable. They are hidden in the woods outside the castle. It's all done now. They're waiting for you, so if you get a move on and stop looking as though you'd forgotten your own name, we can go and meet them." "Did you find weapons?" "Well, no, I didn't have a chance to look." "Really," she said, "you can't expect me to do everything, can you?" Eilonwy held the glowing sphere close to the stone floor. "Go first," she said, "then I'll come down after, so I can put the stone back in place. Then, when Akron sends to have you killed, there won't be any trace at all. She'll think you just disappeared into thin air, and that will make it all the more vexing. I know it isn't nice to vex people on purpose. It's like handing them a toad, but this is going to be too good to miss, and I may never get another chance at it." "Akron will know you let us escape," Taran said. "No, she won't, because she'll think I'm still locked up, and she doesn't even know I can get out, and she doesn't know I was here. But it's very thoughtful of you to say that. It shows a kind heart, and I think that's so much more important than being clever." While Eilonwy continued to chatter away, Taran lowered himself into the narrow opening. The passage was low, and he discovered he was obliged to crouch almost on his hands and knees. Eilonwy moved the stone into place and then began to lead the way. The glow from the sphere showed the walls of hard-packed earth. As Taran hunched along, other galleries opened up on either side. "Be sure you follow me," Eilonwy called. "Don't go in any of those. Some of them branch off, and some of them don't go anywhere at all, and you'd get lost, and that would be a useless thing to do if you're trying to escape." The girl moved so quickly, Taran had difficulty keeping up with her. Twice he stumbled over loose stones in the passage, clutched at the ground, and pitched forward. The little light bobbed ahead, while behind him long fingers of darkness grasped at his heels. He could understand why Akron's fortress was called Spiral Castle. The narrow, stifling galleries turned endlessly. He could not be sure whether they were making any real progress or whether the tunnel was merely doubling back on itself. The earthen ceiling trembled with racing footsteps. "We're just below the guardroom," Eilonwy whispered. "Something's happening up there. Akron usually doesn't turn them out the guard in the middle of the night." "They must have gone to the cells," Taran said. "There's a lot of commotion just before you came. They surely know we're gone." "You must be a very important assistant pig keeper," Eilonwy said with a small laugh. Akron wouldn't go to all the trouble unless—" "Hurry," Taran urged. "If she puts a guard around the castle, we'll never get out." "I wish you would stop worrying," said Eilonwy. "You'd sound as if you'd sound as if you were having your toes twisted. Akron can send out all the guards she wants. She doesn't know where the mouth of the tunnel is. And it's hidden so well an owl couldn't see it. After all, you don't think that I'd march you out in front of the front gate, do you? Despite her chattering, Illinois kept a rapid pace. Tarn bent close to the ground, moving half by touch, keeping his eyes a faint glow. He skidded past the sharp turns, fetched up against the rough wall, skinned his knees, then had to move twice as fast to regain the ground he had lost. At another bend in the passageway, Illinois' light wavered and dropped out of sight. In the moment of darkness, Tarn lost his footing as the ground rose steeply on one side. He fell and rolled. Before he could recover his balance, he was sliding rapidly downward in a shower of loose stones and earth. He collided with an outcropping of rock, rolled again, and dropped suddenly into the darkness. He landed heavily on the flat stones, legs twisted under him. Tarn climbed painfully to his feet and shook his head to clear it. Suddenly he realized he was standing upright. Illinois and her light could not be seen. He called as loudly as he dared. After a few moments he heard the scraping above him and what was a faint reflection of the golden ball. "Where are you?" called the girl. Her voice seemed quite distant. "Oh, I see. Part of the tunnel's given way. You must have slipped into a crevice." "It's not a crevice," Tarn said. "I've fallen way down into something and it's deep. Can't you point the light down here? I've got to get up again." There were more scraping noises. "Yes," Illinois said, "you've got yourself into a mess. The ground's all broken through here, and below there's a big stone like a shelf over your head. How did you ever manage that?" "I don't know," Tarn said, "but I certainly didn't do it on purpose." "It's strange," Illinois said. "That wasn't here when I came through the first time. All that tramping must have jarred something loose. It's hard to say. I don't think those tunnels are half as solid as they look. Neither is the castle, for matter of that. Akron's always complaining about things leaking and doors not closing right." "Do stop prattling," Tarn said. "I don't want to hear about leaks and doors. Show a light so I can climb out of here." "The trouble is," said the girl, "I'm not quite sure you can. You see, that shelf of stone juts out so far and goes straight down steeply. Can you manage to reach it?" Tarn raised his arms and jumped as high as he could. He could find no handhold. From Illinois' description and from the massive shadow above, he feared the girl was right. He could not reach the stone, and, even if he could have, its sharp downward pitch would have made it impossible to climb. Tarn groaned with despair. "Go on without me. Warn my companion the castle is alerted." "And what do you intend to do? You can't just sit there like a fly in a jug. That isn't going to help matters at all." "It doesn't make any difference about me," Tarn said. "You can find a rope and come back when things are safe. Who knows when that will be? If Akron sees me, there's no telling what might happen. And suppose I couldn't get back? You turn into a skeleton while you're waiting." "I don't know how long it takes for people to turn into skeletons, though I would imagine it would take some time. But you'd be far worse off than you are now." "What else am I to do?" Tarn cried. Illinois' talk of skeletons made his blood run cold. He recalled then the sound of Gwyn the hunter's horn, and the memory of it filled him with grief and fear. He bowed his head and turned his face to the rough wall. "That's very noble of you," said Illinois, "but I don't think it's really necessary, not yet at any rate. If Akron's warriors come out and start beating the woods, I hardly think your friend would stay around waiting. He'd go hide and find you later, or so I should imagine. That would be the sensible thing to do. Of course, if he's an assistant pig keeper too, it's hard to guess how his mind might work." "He's not an assistant pig keeper. Well, it's none of your business what he is." "That's not a very polite thing to say." "Well, nevertheless, the main thing to do is to get you out." "There's nothing we can do," Tarn said. "I'm caught here and locked up better than Akron ever could have planned." "Don't say that. I could tear up my robe, plait it into a cord, and let you... And I'll tell you right away, I wouldn't enjoy crawling around the tunnels without any clothes on, but I don't think it would be long enough or strong enough. I suppose I could cut off my hair. If I had a pair of shears and add onto it, no, that still wouldn't do. Won't you please be quiet and let me think? Wait! I'm going to drop my bauble to you. Here, catch. And the golden sphere came hurtling over the ledge. Taran caught it in midair. Now then. What's down there? Is it just a spit of some kind? Is it just a pit of some kind? Taran raised the ball above his head. Why, it's not a hole at all. It's a kind of chamber. There's a tunnel here, too. He took a few paces. I can't see where it ends. It's big. Stones rattled behind him, and in an instant, Eilonwy dropped to the ground. Taran stared at her in disbelief. You fool, he shouted. You addle-brained... What have you done? Now both of us are trapped, and you talk about sense. You haven't... Eilonwy smiled at him and waited until he ran out of breath. Now, she said, if you're quite finished, let me explain something very simple to you. If there's a tunnel, it has to go someplace. And wherever it goes, there's a very good chance it will be better than where we are right now. I didn't mean to call you names, but sorrowfully he added, there was no reason for you to put yourself in danger. There you go again, Eilonwy said. I promised to help you escape, and that's what I'm doing. I understand about tunnels, and I shouldn't be surprised if this one followed the same direction as the one above. It doesn't have half as many galleries coming off it, and besides, it's a lot more comfortable. Eilonwy took the glowing sphere from Taran's hand and stepped forward into the passageway. Still doubtful, Taran followed, which will bring us to Chapter 8, The Barrow.